Welcome back to the Deep Dive. Today we're really focusing in on the material you sent us. Specifically, it's your summary of the book, The Thing About Jellyfish, by Ali Benjamin.
Right.
So this isn't just, a simple recap. We want to pull out the key stuff, the insights, the surprising bits from your source material, give you that shortcut to really getting the heart of the story.
Yeah, based on what you've provided.
Exactly. We've got your summary right here. It lays out the plot, the characters, some really interesting themes.
It does.
So, our mission, let's unpack all of this, really try to understand Susie's journey as it's presented here in this summary, and see what your summary says is important about, grief, science, friendship, all that. Finding your way through loss.
It's a heavy mix.
It is. Okay, let's unpack this.
Well, what's laid out right away in your summary is a look at grief through a very specific lens, right? A 12-year-old trying to handle something just completely baffling.
Totally. Your source introduces us to Susie Swanson, and she's described as just reeling after her best friend Franny drowns.
While on vacation, the summary says. Just awful.
Yeah, and the immediate reaction, your summary really highlights this, is pretty intense. Susie just stops talking.
Completely.
To everyone. Her parents, her brother Aaron, just silence.
Wow. And her parents, who are divorced, according to your material, their response is to send her to counseling.
Which makes sense, right? A logical step.
Sure, a common approach. But your summary seems to indicate it doesn't, immediately fix things. That wall of silence is still there.
Exactly. That silence is such a huge initial thing presented in the summary. But then your source points to a specific moment, a turning point. It's a school field trip.
Right, to an aquarium.
Yes, and specifically the jellyfish exhibit.
And this is where the science quest kind of kicks off.
It is. Your summary notes she sees the jellyfish, and she reads about this one in particular, the irukandji.
Tiny thing, right, but deadly.
Incredibly deadly venom, your material highlights. Native to Australia, but there's this detail that it started to migrate. And for Susie, this sparks an immediate, absolute conviction.
That Franny must have been stung by one, even though it's supposed to be in Australia and not where Franny was vacationing.
Exactly, despite the, huge improbability.
What's fascinating here, and this is a key insight I think from your summary, is why a young person faced with something so random, so senseless as a sudden death, might latch on to a scientific explanation.
Right.
Science, it's about cause and effect. It's about finding reasons, things you can measure or test. It offers a kind of framework, maybe, a way to put some order onto the total chaos of grief.
That makes sense.
If there's a biological cause, even a really unlikely one, like this jellyfish, maybe it feels less arbitrary. Less like Franny just vanished for no reason at all.
That's a really crucial point your summary brings out. It gives her something solid, something to research, something to prove, when absolutely everything else feels out of her control. Now, your summary also mentions that the book weaves in flashbacks.
Yes. And those flashbacks sound vital for understanding, the history of their friendship. Adds a lot of emotional weight to the loss described in your material.
Definitely. Your source says they met really young, swim class, became totally inseparable, best friends.
Classic childhood bond.
And there's this really significant promise Franny makes. Your summary specifically flags this. They were talking about some popular girl who was kind of arrogant. And Franny makes Susie promise that if she, Franny, ever started acting like that, Susie had to send her a big message. Something impossible to ignore.
A message to stop her from becoming like that girl.
Yeah, exactly. So she wouldn't turn into that kind of person, like a wake-up call.
That sounds like a heavy promise for kids to make. It's framed in your summary almost like this pact, right? Accountability.
It is. A gesture of trust, maybe, but yeah, as we see, it ends up carrying this really painful weight later on.
Because things change.
Right. What unfolds next, according to your summary, is that friendship starting to fray, sort of drift apart in 6th grade. Your material notes, Franny starts focusing more on, appearance, clothes, a boy named Dylan. Typical middle school stuff, I guess.
And your summary mentions she starts sitting with the pretty girls at lunch, leaving Susie behind.
Yeah, leaving Susie feeling, pretty isolated. And your summary describes Susie trying to fit in with this new group, making small talk.
But it doesn't work.
No, it just makes her feel, the summary says, weird and undesirable. And crucially, your material explains that Franny eventually just starts ignoring her.
Oof, that's tough.
Yeah, so that promise they made, suddenly it feels really relevant, but also incredibly hard to actually do anything about.
Your summary really captures that painful, almost universal part of growing up, doesn't it? The way friendships shift, priorities change, kids grow apart. It happens, but it hurts.
It really does. Which leads us to the big message moment, and your summary makes it crystal clear this goes really, really wrong.
Okay, I'm bracing myself.
Your material notes, Susie feels guilty about how Franny's changed, but she also feels like totally bound by this promise she made years ago. She has to do something.
And the big message she chooses is, oh, your summary details, it's certainly something.
Oh, it's something, all right. She freezes her own urine.
Wait, what?
Yeah, freezes it into sheets and puts them in Franny's locker.
Oh my God, seriously.
Seriously. Your summary explains her thinking was, like, this super drastic act would be a wake-up call. You know, shock Franny back to her senses, maybe lead to an apology, they could be friends again.
Wow, okay. But the reality, as recounted in your material, was
No,
not that.
not even close. Devastatingly different. Your summary details Franny having to clean out her locker, totally humiliated.
Yep.
She never makes eye contact with Susie again, never calls her.
Oh, Susie.
And the last memory Susie has of Franny, as told in your source, is watching her walk down the school hallway carrying trash bags full of her ruined stuff.
Oh,
Smelling
I
it,
like that.
you know.
Wow, that's heavy. Your summary just powerfully shows how badly things can break down between kids, right? How communication just collapses. What Susie intended as this, like, desperate attempt to reconnect,
Yeah.
it just leads to total rupture, and that becomes the final memory. That awful moment, it adds this whole layer of guilt, you know? Unfinished business on top of the grief.
That unfinished business, the pain of that last interaction described in your summary, it really seems to fuel her obsession with the jellyfish, doesn't it? Her scientific quest.
Feels like it? A way to channel that pain and guilt, maybe?
Maybe. Your source details her doing tons of research on jellyfish after that.
Right, diving deep into it.
In your summary notes, she decides she needs an expert's help. She zeroes in on Dr. Jamie Seymour in Australia.
The Irokanji expert.
Exactly. And your material includes this interesting little detail. She apparently researched other potential experts and crossed them off her list, including a long-distance swimmer, Diana Nyad.
Oh, Diana Nyad. That detail in your summary feels like it might be important later, doesn't it? Kind of set something up.
It really does, based on what you shared.
Yeah.
And Susie gets this idea inspired, your summary says, by her counselor talking about how important face-to-face communication is.
Okay.
She decides the only logical next step is to actually go to Australia, to meet Dr. Seymour in person.
Wow. Okay, that's bold. How does she plan to manage that?
Well, your summary goes into detail about her methods for funding this rather ambitious trip.
Let me guess, not exactly conventional fundraising?
Not exactly. She uses her dad's credit card number. She steals cash from her mom and her brother.
Oh, boy. Yeah, as described in your material, that sounds like a pretty desperate plan, born out of grief and just this single-minded focus on getting that scientific answer.
Totally. But while she's caught up in this, like, secret, elaborate plan, your summary also points out that she's starting to find little bits of support in places she might not expect.
Oh, like where?
There's her science teacher, Mrs. Turton. She seems to notice Susie struggling.
And how does she help?
Your material shows Mrs. Turton offering this kind of quiet, steady support through science. Invites Susie to eat lunch in the classroom, shows her science videos.
Ah, connecting through a shared interest. When maybe talking directly about feelings is too hard for Susie.
Exactly. And then there's Justin Maloney, her lab partner.
Okay.
Your summary describes him as having ADHD, but he's on meds now and showing better focus. And while some other kids are apparently calling Susie Medusa, because she's withdrawn, maybe looks intent.
Oh, kids can be cruel.
Yeah. But Justin, your summary notes he calls her Belle.
Belle.
Yeah, referencing the bell shape of a jellyfish.
No, that's actually really kind. A small thing, but highlighted in your material as showing some real empathy, right? An unexpected connection starting to form there.
Yeah, those little connections are just starting to sprout around her isolation, as your summary seems to indicate. But the big Australia plan, it hits a wall. A very practical wall at the airport.
Let me guess. Something logistical.
Yep. Your summary describes her getting all the way to the ticket counter, ready to go, but she gets stopped. She needs a visa to fly to Australia.
Ah. The simple, practical reality crashes the dream.
Totally. Your material says she's, completely distraught. But the ticket agent is kind, helps her to a waiting area.
And
then her family shows up. Her mom, Aaron, Rocco the stepdad.
Okay.
And your summary marks this as a really significant moment, a turning point, because Susie finally starts talking to them.
She breaks her silence.
She does. Starts apologizing for stealing the money.
Wow, so this is where that wall really starts to crack, according to your summary, facing the consequences maybe, and just seeing her family there. It starts breaking through that intense isolation.
That seems like it. And while they're all there at the airport, just sitting together, your summary notes they see something on the airport TVs, on the news.
What is it?
It's Diana Nide.
Ah, the swimmer she researched, as your material mentioned earlier.
Exactly. The news is reporting that she just successfully completed her swim from Cuba to Florida, 103 miles.
Wow, that's incredible endurance.
Right, and your summary states that Susie, like in the middle of her own total mess and struggle, is profoundly inspired seeing Diana's bravery, pursuing this incredibly hard, monumental goal.
Your material draws a really powerful parallel there, doesn't it? Diana's physical struggle, her perseverance against huge odds, it resonates with Susie's internal struggle, her emotional endurance.
Yeah, it suggests bravery isn't just about, swimming oceans. It's also about just keeping going emotionally.
That makes a lot of sense.
And that inspiration, as detailed in your summary, seems to give her a little push. It fuels her next steps. Your summary mentions Justin, her lab partner.
Yeah, Del.
He invites her to the school costume dance.
Ooh, okay, another social hurdle. That sounds like it would be terrifying for someone who's been so shut down, as your summary describes her.
Totally. Your source says she is frightened, but she decides she's going to be brave. She's going to try it.
Good for her.
And before she goes, she makes a quick call to her dad to apologize.
And how does that go?
Your summary specifically notes his reaction. He gets really emotional, all choked up, just hearing her voice again after so long.
Another connection mended. Another crack in that silence, based on the details you shared.
Exactly. And then, the scene at the dance itself. Your summary describes her standing outside, nervous. She sees another girl from her class, also looking nervous.
Okay.
And that girl asks Susie if maybe they could walk in together.
Oh.
And as your summary paints the picture, Susie takes this deep breath and they walk into the room together. A room described as full of laughter and pulsating lights. Here's where it gets really interesting. And it's really interesting because it's not like, a magic wand waving away her grief or her social anxiety, but your summary highlights it as this small, really brave step back into the world.
Yeah.
Back into connection, hand in hand with someone else who's also feeling nervous.
It's a really subtle but significant image your summary leaves us with, isn't it? Healing starts maybe not with some grand scientific discovery about a jellyfish in Australia, but through human connection, shared vulnerability. The material seems to suggest that being brave enough to face those small, immediate fears is just as important, maybe more so, than chasing these huge abstract answers.
That's a great point. Now, beyond Susie's main story, the grief, the jellyfish quest, your summary also touches on some other kind of fascinating ideas and concepts that are apparently in the book.
Yeah, your list from the summary mentioned things like evolution, the universe expanding.
Right, an immortal type of jellyfish, the Earth being billions of years old.
Big science concepts.
And Susie's own idea from your source that maybe time and space are the same thing, and all moments might exist simultaneously.
Heavy thoughts for a 12-year-old. Your material also brought up the science teacher's view, right?
Yeah, Mrs. Turton's idea that science is what you turn to when human knowledge runs out. It's a process for finding answers no one else has, a way to keep searching. And finally, your summary noted Susie's own speculation that self-confidence is almost like magic, something that can carry you through anything.
Okay, so if we connect this to the bigger picture presented in your summary, all these different ideas, scientific, philosophical, even that touch of magic, they almost seem to function like tools, maybe, frameworks for Susie's mind to grapple with something as huge and inexplicable as death.
Yeah, like ways to make sense of it.
Exactly. Faced with chaos, with something that feels meaningless, your summary suggests she's sort of casting around for anything that helps. Scientific facts, big abstract possibilities, maybe even just perceived inner strength, anything to build some kind of understanding, some order, some sense of possibility in her world again.
That makes sense. The immortal jellyfish counters death's finality.
Right. The vast universe maybe puts her own pain in perspective. The idea of time all existing at once, maybe that offers a tiny hope that the past, her time with Franny, isn't completely gone. They aren't just facts she's learning. Your summary implies they're emotional tools she's using to cope.
That's a really powerful way to pull those threads together from your source. It's all part of her trying to find meaning, some control when the world feels totally out of control. So, based on the summary you provided, what does this all mean for you, the listener?
Well, Susie's journey, as it's laid out in your summary, it really gives us this deep, resonant look at processing grief, especially as a young person. It shows the profound isolation loss can bring. The sometimes really unconventional paths we take trying to find answers or just regain some control, and that slow, often really hard process of finding your way back to connection, back to speaking again.
And it really touches on those complicated, sometimes painful dynamics of friendships, especially in adolescence, that ache when you drift apart, and the heavy weight of unresolved stuff, like that horrible final locker incident described in your summary.
Definitely.
It highlights how finding support, whether it's from a time teacher, an understanding lab partner, or eventually your family, how crucial that is to even begin healing.
Which I think raises an important question for you listening. When you face things that are hard to understand, maybe it's a big loss or unexpected change or just life being complicated and confusing, what do you turn to? What are your sources of comfort or explanation or strength? Is it science? Is it faith? Maybe philosophy? Is it human connection? Or something else entirely? How do you find your framework?
That's definitely something worth thinking about, isn't it? How we all try to make sense of things that don't make sense, using whatever tools or frameworks we can find or build. Well, thank you for joining us on this deep dive into your summary of the Thing About Jellyfish.
Yeah, it's quite a story. It reminds us, as your summary suggests, that even when things feel incredibly dark, those small steps towards connection, towards bravery, they are possible. And maybe the deepest insights don't always come from the big scientific facts, but just from shared human experience.
Well said. And maybe consider this. Based on your material, sometimes the most profound acts of bravery aren't swimming oceans. Sometimes it's just taking a deep breath and walking through a door into a room full of people, maybe next to someone else who's also just trying to figure things out. Until next time on The Deep Dive.